Beyond the Shadows. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. We have a great show coming up for you tonight. Actually, we're going to have a little bit of fun tonight. Monoliths. What is this craziness going on with those? Coming up next. Welcome back, everybody, to Beyond the Shadows. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. We have a fantastic and fun episode coming up for you tonight. We're going to be talking about all of those crazy monoliths that are out there right now. And, well, we'll take it a few steps further than that, and we'll get into what monoliths really are. We'll get into some ancient monoliths and the like. But right now, we're going to start with these fun monoliths that have been popping up all over the place over the last several weeks. Interesting way to end up or close out 2020. But first, of course, we've got to mention that this episode of Beyond the Shadows is brought to you by 100 Road Roast. It helps you hunt ghosts. That is our coffee. You can find that out at hauntedroadmedia.com. You can also find it on my website, MikeRicksecker.com, and actually for the holidays at MikeRicksecker.com. I have a bunch of holiday deals out there right now. You can get all kinds of autographed books. You can get T-shirts, the coffee, ghosties out there, up to 25% off. So they're all different percentages. And I think it's the lowest is like 12%, and then all the way up to 25% off. You can get all kinds of different merch and autographed books and what have you out there at MikeRicksecker.com. I also want to thank everybody who has been voting for the Paranormal Rewind Awards. So I was nominated, just announced last night. I was nominated for Best Paranormal Book for A Walk in the Shadows, a complete guide to shadow people, and for their award called Paranormal Trailblazer Award, which Victoria Monday was telling me that's kind of like their director award. It's supposed to be like the prestige award, for lack of a better term. So I'm very, very honored by that, to be nominated for 2 awards from Paranormal Rewind. You can check them out, paranormalrewind.com. And know Quarantine Ghost has been putting the link in the chat this evening on Edge of the Rabbit Hole, and now she's thrown it down there at Beyond the Shadows. So thank you all very, very much for those that have been voting for me for that. So absolutely am honored, and really couldn't do it without you guys. You guys have been a fantastic support. Also want to thank Nicole Guillaume, my girlfriend, Guiding Echoes channel, who has been extremely supportive here for quite a while now. And yeah, it's just 2020 has turned out to be an amazing year. Even with all the craziness going on, 2020 has been extraordinary. You know, it started earlier this year with the Alaska Triangle. Yeah, filmed in 2019, but the Alaska Triangle came out here at the beginning of 2021. 2021 is coming up here in a few weeks, and then life changes and what have you in the middle of the year. But the new Shadow Dimensions project is going to be coming out, and there was fantastic filming done for that. I had the book come out, A Walk in the Shadows, and just so many interesting opportunities have come up, like the Ireland trip. If you haven't signed up for the Ireland trip, there's only a handful of spots left, so you can find that at mysteriouslousadventurestours.com. Of course, the Egypt trip that we were talking about with Johnny's come up. Now the UFO Mega Conference in Laughlin. So that's Laughlin, UFOmegaconference.com. So all these different things have been popping up here, and it's all these years, all the support from you guys over those years. It's just been amazing. So these are things that are usually saying like a year end. We're getting close enough. This is our second to last episode here. Next week will be the last, so I guess I should mention that next week is our last episode of the year. Rob Guttrow on Edge of the Rabbit Hole for that, and I didn't decide on a topic yet for Beyond the Shadows, but that'll be coming up. So in any case, as we roll into 2021, we've had these very bizarre monoliths popping up at the end of 2020. Now, it really all started with these, this monolith in Utah. It was, because it's been removed, about 10 to 12 feet tall. And it was this metallic object that was just found out there kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I guess going back through the imagery, it was deduced that it was originally set up there out in back as far as 2015. Why it was erected there, we don't know the full story of what happened there. Its actual origins. A lot of people speculate it was part of a movie set or a set for a TV show, and it was just left out there. So it's been there for a handful of years now. But it was recently discovered in a flyover of the area, and once it was discovered, we've seen a plethora of monoliths suddenly popping up. So, like I said, it's been removed. The Utah Land Management, whatever the organization is called, did not want people going up there. But of course, people went up there anyway. And whether Utah moved it or one of the people that went up there to go visit it, grabbed it and removed it, we don't know. They're being kind of quiet about that. Our friend Lee Ehrlich had some interesting comments about that because, of course, I've been posting some of the stuff on my Facebook, and he's one of our Haunted Road Media authors, and so it's funny because he's like a little he's a little perturbed about all of because there was a lot of false press about it at first, and so Lee was saying this was discovered by some of the guys from the Sparks Motor Company. They were out doing some fly and metal detecting via Dave Sparks' helicopter. They detected an anomaly on the ground while looking for anything in an old riverbed, and they discovered a big geocache that somebody left in hopes that this exact thing would happen. So kind of some interesting comments there from Lee. And yeah, it's just one of those bizarre things that this object that was presumably left out there has now sparked so much of an interest. But to me, it's fascinating. It's something that has brought the world together. And we mentioned that when we had Johnny Enoch on Edge of the Rabbit Hole a little while ago, because the monoliths came up during that conversation. And one of the things that we did talk about very briefly was that, with the internet now, something like this kind of goes viral, and yeah, there may be a lot of other copycats out there, but it's something that's kind of united the world. We have all of this craziness going on right now with COVID and other things going on in the world. We had all of the social tensions this year. Of course, we just had this, all the ridiculous stuff going on with the presidential elections, all these areas of strife throughout 2020. And here's something that to me is a little... It's fun. There's a fun aspect to this. There's a playful aspect to it because all these different monoliths that are popping up, I mean, I don't believe that they're, supernatural or anything like that, but we're going to get into some of those aspects with some of the real monoliths. But this is something that I think is culturally fun on a global scale. So, Robert Hanna adds to all the weirdness of 2020, including the murder hornets. Yeah, you don't hear about the murder hornets anymore. But then Tom McNicholas, 2020, and Mike's Odyssey. Yeah, we'll get into that too, for sure. Sarah Yusuf, can you really call it a monolith since there seem to be multiple? Yeah, actually, we'll get into the definition of a monolith here. They absolutely are monoliths. Alina the Fam question: since all the monoliths have turned out to be fake and created by people, how will we know when one is actually real? Good question. Well, here's the thing. So I guess I'll get into the definition of a monolith now. I was going to save it until we got into like the real monolith. So, definition of a monolith is a large single upright block of stone, especially one shaped into or serving as a pillar or monument. That's one definition. It doesn't necessarily have to be stone, but our ancient monoliths are. So it's basically a single pillar standing upright, and that's what you have. So these are by definition real monoliths. They're not. In one sense, they're not actually fake. They're modern creations, people copying each other in doing this, but they are actually erecting monoliths. Now, they're not in the context that we have come to over the years think about it, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, or some of the ancient monoliths that we're used to seeing. These are like a more modern version of it, with no significance other than we're erecting these to whether it's almost like a prank or to have fun. Some people are erecting them because, and there are people that have admitted to, yes, we erected it, and it's in light of COVID, they're trying to do something to bring people together. So, and we'll get into some of that as we go along. Now, these things have been all over the place, and there was no way for me to grab photos from every location that has had them erected. But I wanted to show a few. So, right after Utah was Romania, and this was the first copycat one. The Utah one was just a left behind or something somebody had put out there years ago and was just now found. Whether it was from a movie set or whether it was geocaching or whatever, it was out there for years, finally found. Well, somebody in Romania erected one. Now, the funny thing about this was the one in Utah disappeared. It's like, oh, it was there. A few days later, now it's gone. And then somebody in Romania erected this. And so there was a lot of, internet strangeness out there of whether it had like teleported over there or something, like that. But you can tell just by looking at it. And I apologize to those in the podcast. You're not going to see the photos. You can join us live Tuesday nights right here on Beyond the Shadows, Edge of the Rabbit Hole YouTube channel. You can see with the one in Romania, all these weird circular marks on it. So this is something that somebody else has put together. And that was pretty obvious right off the bat that this was something that was very, very different. Even though it was another monolith, it was not the same one from Utah. But then other places around the world, of course, started copying again. So this one in Pittsburgh is right outside of a candy store, and it's on the sidewalk. It's not even bedded into the ground. It's on some sort of like metal plate or whatever, and it's set up right outside the candy store. So now this, you can almost see the commercialism here. Like, okay, here's our monolith. Come to the candy store. We've set up an attraction here for you. So now everybody's walking by Grandpa Joe's candy shop in Pittsburgh. Now, whether the people at the candy shop did it or not, nobody is fessed up. But to me, it almost seems a little obvious that this would be an attraction to people coming to the shop. So then there's one here in Austin, Texas. So they're popping up all over. And this one actually looks really nice, the way it's set up in the park. It actually looks like a feature that would be there in this nice little park area. Then we had one show up in England. Here's another one. This is on the Isle of Wight. You have this beautiful scenery here. This one is a lot more, it's more shiny. It has, it has almost like a trapezoidal type of top to it. You have the sun shining off of it. It's actually a rather beautiful monolith, and it's also interesting that all of these happen to be metal. I guess we have an easier time working with metal now than trying to carve something out of stone, of course. And yeah, Robert Hanna is asking, is it a glass monolith? No, that's actually metal. It's just a very, very shiny metal. More recent one here that's shown up over the past day. This is a definitely not shiny metal. It's rather dull, but it's Canyon County Park. This is in California, right next to the highway, but it's near a hiking path, and again, just kind of showed up there a day ago. California has had a bunch of these now. It seems to be a growing trend out there. So it's not just that one. I'm going to show another one here in just a moment, but there are several that have been showing up out there in California. So there's that one. Then San Luis Obispo County. So this one was erected, was taken down, and has been re-erected. And as a more permanent feature, I guess the people that have put this up, and we'll show these guys here in just a moment, but the guys that have put this up were actually artists. And where is the information on these guys? I had it up here. I don't know why it disappeared on me, but yeah, so they were artists who basically admitted, yes, we had erected this. They have the new structure that's there now, again, more permanent. They've added concrete to it, and it's going to be there. And one of the things that they wanted to do was kind of encourage people that are cooped up with, with COVID to get out onto like the hiking trails and the fresh air and what have you. And this is them actually building it. And I wanted to give you a little bit more information about these guys, but for some reason, what I had brought up has disappeared. I hate it when that happens. Do these preparations and then the stuff disappears on you. That figures. But in any case, these guys are actually artists out there in California, and that's them putting together one of the monoliths. So now there are some other memes that have come out now that are certainly more playful. There's Sasquatch with a tinfoil monolith, and then this one that Nicole forwarded to me with the Utah monolith with a message. Hello, we've been trying to reach you about your vehicle's extended warranty. So people are getting very, very playful about all of these different monoliths. And again, I think it's something that is almost like a unique way to end this crazy year of 2020, that we've had all of this ridiculousness going on all year, and here's a much more playful way to bring the world together. With all the strife that's been going on, let's end the year on a good note. For those keeping score at home, I don't know of anybody who had monoliths on their scorecard for December 2020. So I think there's a few comments here. Robert Hannon, the new crop circles are these monoliths. Yeah, it's kind of that thing. We had the crop circles. In crop circles, well, we're not going to dive deep into that. We'll get Freddie Silva on one of these days again to talk more about crop circles. And we've had him on talking a little bit about that before, because there are certainly man-made crop circles, and there are actually some real ones, which is a quite interesting phenomenon. So, and Candy Orton, yeah, it's innocent at this point. Some are funny, and it's getting us engaged in conversation about it. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely become a very viral thing. It is getting us in conversation about it. Oh, the other thing about those guys that are that I thought was interesting about one of the reasons why they built their monolith, the artists that have actually admitted to it. They said that they were inspired by 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I found kind of interesting because, um, if that one hadn't been found in Utah and all these other copycat ones hadn't been showing up all over the place, would they have really built one themselves? I don't think so. Um, as much as they have been inspired by 2001: A Space Odyssey, I would guess it's something that they would have done years ago, not now, after all these other ones have appeared. But speaking of 2001: A Space Odyssey, that is where people are seemingly most familiar with the concept of the monoliths. So let's go ahead and talk about that for a little bit. So this is what people remember about monoliths. They remember the monkeys there by this tall, black, slender. Um, well, it looks like a black stone, or is it black metal? We don't really know. It's tall, black, shiny, and slender. It's actually alien technology. If you go into the books by Arthur C. Clarke, he explains a little bit, well, actually, probably quite a bit more within the book about what these things actually are, and that these ancient aliens that were some of the original entities in the universe had created these and sent them out into different potential solar systems that looked like they would have something worthwhile for intelligent life. And in this instance, with the monkeys, they seemingly evolve after this happens, and so each monolith seems to have its own function, its own technology within it. And so later on, as we get further into the movie, there's Bowman with the monolith that appears in this room that he ends up in the bed in. And so this is kind of the catalyst throughout the movie. We have these different monoliths that appear, and they seemingly send humanity on their quest, and to keep leveling up, for lack of a better term, but basically to keep evolving and keep discovering secrets of the universe and what have you. And so that's what they're used for in that movie, that book. And it's an interesting concept, or I guess an interesting device that's used for the concept that Arthur C. Clarke was giving us. And yeah, Robert, the ending was weird. Yeah, it's a little trippy. The ending is definitely trippy, that's for sure. But when we get into our own history and what monoliths are, again, we go back to the definition of what a monolith is: large, single, upright block of stone, especially one shaped into or serving as a pillar or monument. That's a lot of different things. So my mouse would work here. So obviously obelisks. This is Karnak in Egypt. And these obelisks right here are actually monoliths. They are single upright blocks of stone projected high up into the air. These are actually ancient monoliths. And the Egyptians put these up everywhere. Now, these metal ones that have been popping up everywhere kind of resemble these to a degree. Now, these metal ones have more of a flat top. And of course, the obelisks have the point. Basically, it's a pyramid on top of the stone pillar that is tapered itself. But these are actually monoliths from thousands of years ago. Sarah Youssef asked a question, what do you think would happen if it was determined if these monoliths were alien in origin? Well, interesting question. They're not alien in origin, especially when you have people that are coming forth and admitting, and they have the photos there to prove it, that they are actually creating them. Um, but if they were alien, I guess this is a very hypothetical. If there were some of them alien in origin, um, we have such an issue with the disclosure right now. Um, there's footage that is being leaked a little bit here, a little bit there of UFOs in the air. If they were to, if they were to reveal some of these appearing on the ground like this, are actually alien, that might spook a few more people, just because you're seeing physical interaction and material left behind as a structure. And so that might alarm a few more people rather than just something zipping through the air. I think there would be certainly many, many people very interested in that. But I think it's quite different when you have something like an actual flying object, a UFO, a saucer, a spaceship, whatever, coming down, because it's not a permanent structure that you've built there. It's a visitor. When somebody actually starts constructing something like that, there's a sense of permanence there. And if they're building a structure onto our land, they're basically saying, yeah, we can build something on your land at will whenever we want, without you having one say so one way or the other. So I think that's where there would be a little bit more cause of alarm rather than just a spaceship coming down and visiting. Again, these monoliths are not alien in nature. And I know when like the first one appeared in Utah, there were a lot of people that were speculating that maybe it was, and what have you. But once you start seeing these other ones pop up all over the place that are quite clearly copycats of it, maybe somebody could still make the debate for the one in Utah, but I think there's been enough that's come out about it that it certainly wasn't. But all the ones since then are definitely copycats, so not worried about it being alien. It's just, to me, it's something. It's an interesting aspect of our culture, and we as humans, that something like this sparks our interest, and we want to mimic that. And as this has prolonged and more people are jumping on it, it's something that has brought us together as a planet. And like I said, I think it's a great way to end out 2020. Is as silly as it may be, it's something that has united us here at the end. Hey, where's the next monolith going to pop up? And so it's been fun. It's been fun. All right. So that was Karnak. But we have a monolith right here in our country too. Looks just like these obelisks at Karnak. That's a Washington Monument. Yes, the Washington Monument is a monolith. It's a obelisk, just like all the ancient Egyptian monoliths as well. Basically stylized, just the exact same. But a lot of people just don't ever think of that. we call it the Washington Monument. We don't ever really call it an obelisk, but that's exactly what it is. So, um, so this what's different about this with the Washington Monument is that um, it isn't, and I guess this is where you would say it may not technically be a monolith, and the fact that it's not a single block of stone, um, it's many stones put together to create that. And there's also an elevator in there, so some people may not consider that a monolith. It's still an obelisk, um, but an example of one here in the United States. Of course, also not as old as the others. And there's another question here from Donna Liska, or is this a comment? Um, what I'm wondering is if the alien theory is tied to this, the reasoning behind the giant pencil shape, just something I'm pondering to myself. Um, I guess you're talking about the shape of obelisks, tall like that. Um, well, basically, what's going on here with the obelisks? So you're talking about, okay, many of these obelisks were granite in nature. Now, granite is like what, 55, 60% quartz. And so what they're doing with the obelisk is basically harnessing energy that's there in the ground. These are energy harnessing mechanisms. And so that a lot of our ancient sites of power used these different things like that to harness that power. We're going to show another one here very, very soon. Um, there are a lot of people who have shown ways in which, when you had, of course, with these places in ruins right now, it doesn't work anymore. But there are a lot of people who have shown that when you had these structures still intact thousands of years ago, that the way the obelisks and other structures were put together there, that they were able to harness this power, and you could enter into altered states of consciousness. You could harness that energy for healing purposes. There are many people who speculate that it could open portals into other dimensions and things like this. I mentioned Freddie Silva earlier, and when we had him on the one time, he mentions it in his books as well, that when he was inside the Great Pyramid at Giza, that they had some time there where they were actually alone for a little while, and all the lights went out, but yet there was still light that actually came from these beings that came out from the basically from the walls. And so the energy there at the Great Pyramid was still being harnessed, and these beings from some other dimension were able to come through, which is extremely fascinating. So that's what these obelisks were used for. Now there's going to be people that will say that maybe the aliens built some of these structures, or they may have taught the people at the time to build these and how to harness the energy, and that's going to be all debatable. I'm not going to go down that road here, but yeah, but those obelisks made of granite were for harnessing that earth energy. All right. So I missed a couple things here. So Victoria Monday at Quarantine Gifts. Are the obelisks capped with something metallic like the pyramids? And some were, or they might have been capped with, well, like some of the pyramids, some of the obelisks were capped with what was known as like a bin stone. So a stone of another material used on top to cap it, again having different properties. And the ancients knew how to, use the stones and the different properties of stones to be able to get them to interact with each other in various ways for whatever purpose that they were trying to do. Like we were talking about before with the altered states of consciousness or opening a portal or healing or what have you. They knew those different combinations. They knew the frequencies that different things resonated. And so, if you had, I don't know, maybe pure quartz on top of something that was granite, or gold on top of something that was pure quartz. I mean, you could have different combinations put together to utilize them for different means. You had, like with the pyramids, they had the limestone or the granite casing around the limestone blocks of the pyramid, and so that acted as an insulator for the structure inside. So they knew how to use their stones and the properties of the stones for different purposes. So yeah, some of them were capped, but like those ones you saw at Karnak were all one piece. Victoria Monday. What if the old obelisks are really docking stations for dirigibles for giants? Really? Okay, so they were just like what? Tying off the rope on the obelisks. Very cute, very cute. Well, it does make you wonder about some different locations, how massive they are in the blocks, the size of the blocks that were used. Were they giants that actually placed those? And there have been remains of giants that have been found all over the world, even though many of those have been hidden now. But we're finding like the Denisovans. We're finding that those were much larger people. And they had massive blocks there for their structures. And it's only a scant bit of archaeological evidence that we have found for them, but what we are seeing with them is they were much bigger people. So I think in the coming years we're going to find out a lot more information about these giants and larger people that did exist. There may be even some still out there today. So, all right. So moving on here, Stonehenge. These are actually monoliths. Now, yeah, each one of these standing stones here is its own monolith. They are put together in a circle, so it's a circle of monoliths. And you may ask about, well, but they seem to be connected. They're really monoliths. Yeah, they have the lintels on top. But the lintels are on top of the monoliths. So the monoliths are the standing stones there, and they have the lintels on top. So, we talked, about ancient sites of power. Here's one right here where the monoliths were used to do something of significance for the ancient people. So, another one of these locations that either they're harnessing power or they have some ceremonial practices that are going on there of healing. There have been many stories of portal activity here. I'm pretty sure we've talked before on here about the teenagers. I think it was in the 1970s that disappeared from here, where there was a policeman nearby, and he witnessed a flash of light, and there were teenagers that were camping up there, and saw a flash of light, and then poof, the kids were gone. So another one of these ancient sites using many monoliths, not just one, but many of them. And then another type of monolith that you may not think is one, but is the Moai on Easter Island. Now, they are carved monoliths. And the photo here on the left, I know the people on the podcast cannot see this. This always fascinates me with the Moai, is how much is actually under the earth. How long were these things here to have been buried that deep? And you can see with the people standing how tall this thing really is. Um, and there are so many of these on the island. It's so many different theories as to how they were able to move these things around and create these tall objects. But yeah, these statues are actually considered monoliths, and they're absolutely fascinating. Um, with the features that are on here, the the head, the nose. You can see the hands down around the belly. Many of these have carvings on the back, but these things are actually considered monoliths, and you wouldn't really think of that. So, the question was thrown out there earlier about, what is a real monolith? Well, all of these are real monoliths. It's just tall, standing, object like that, and we look at these ones that are showing up now, and because of the fact it doesn't look like the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey, or it's not something ancient like an obelisk or whatever, we're like, well, it's not a real monolith. What it is. And what's interesting about the 2001: Space Odyssey monolith is there is a replica one. And people would say, well, that's a fake monolith. But, it's a monolith, and it's in and of itself. There's a replica one in Paris, actually. So that it would actually be a monolith of a monolith. Tom McNicholas, every time I see Stonehenge, I think of the scene in the European Vacation when the Griswolds knock it over. I was just watching Christmas Vacation the other night with Nicole. Yeah, that's funny, the Stonehenge scene. All right, what am I missing here? So Victoria Monday, were they buried or were they there for a long time? For the Moai at Easter Island, they were there for a long time, and then just like with anything, with any of our ancient objects, over time they become buried as the dirt moves in. I mean, like you take the Sphinx in Egypt, it has actually been buried for more years than it's been revealed. So they've unburied that. I don't know how many times now. You hear the stories of even in ancient times they were digging the sand out of there to reveal it again, and then the sand would fill back in, and then centuries later they'd unbury the thing again. It's really just over the past maybe 80 years now that it has been permanently revealed, which is actually taking wear and tear on the Sphinx. But basically the same type of concept where, the more you dig down into the earth, the more archaeology you find. Well, those Moai were so big, they hadn't gotten, completely submerged yet. You can, let me bring the photo back up. So you can see on the right-hand side how far they had gotten buried. And that's just from natural elements there. Now, a place like Göbekli Tepe, they intentionally filled that in, and there's evidence that shows that it was intentionally built in. The hill that is there is essentially the structure itself, and then they buried it and basically made a hill out of the Göbekli Tepe site. The big question is why they did that. Now, again, there's a number of monoliths there in Göbekli Tepe. You have these T-shaped monoliths, in circles, which, as of now, is the oldest temple that we have on record. And I say as of now because you never know what the future will reveal. It was not long ago that we didn't know Göbekli Tepe existed, and the archaeological community was saying, well, civilization didn't go back 10,000 years. It was one of the reasons why they gave like John Anthony West and Robert Schoch such a hard time with the Sphinx. Was they were trying to say, well, this thing's at least 10,000 years old based on the geological evidence of the water erosion on the Sphinx enclosure. And the Egyptologists are saying, well, civilization didn't exist back then. You can't we haven't found archaeological evidence of basically like organic material. We don't have anything to carbon date 10,000 years ago. There weren't other structures around the world built 10,000 years ago. These are all the reasons. Oh, then up pops Göbekli Tepe, which they were able to date to 10,000 years ago. So they're like, well, here's a contemporary of what we're saying the Sphinx is. So so that's been a extremely impressive find. And then they, as they keep searching and discovering, they're finding evidence of more intelligent cultures in fragments of civilization further and further back, which has been absolutely fascinating. So I think as we keep exploring here over the decades and over the centuries, we're going to discover that there were civilizations extremely far back that that we never thought possible before. I think a lot of them are under the water as well. The water level is so much higher than it was, thousands of years ago because, well, after the after the ice age ended, the ice started melting. So during the ice age, there was not as much water in the world, so a lot more land was exposed, and people, built their cities near the water. And then once the ice cap started melting, well, those cities became submerged under the water. And so, yeah, there's so much history lost under the water, and then under the land as well, like we've been talking about. So, Candy Orton, Mike, I'm wondering how an EMF meter will react at the pyramids. Is it natural EMF in the area, or is it generated by EMF from the pyramid? It interests me greatly. So, Candy, I will let you know, because when I'm in Egypt in June, that's one of the things that I'm going to be doing there. Yeah, there are a lot of people who talk about the pyramids being a power plant. And one of the things that they say about why it doesn't really work so well anymore is because it's lost its insulation. One of the unfortunate things about the pyramids, the two large ones, is that they've essentially lost their granite insulation. Now you can see at the top of the one, there's a little bit of that left. On the Great Pyramid of Giza, it's all gone. And what ended up happening was those stones were those casing stones were stripped off of there and used throughout the city of Cairo, and like a lot of the mosques and what have you, they used the stone. And so if you want to see the original outer casing stones of the pyramids, you go into the city, and there are buildings constructed of it. But again, there are a lot of people who say that you can still get a lot of energy within the temple itself. And kind of talked a little bit about Freddie here a couple of times. So Mike, how do you think they were brought to Easter Island? So the Moai. Well, the Moai. The Moai were supposed to be the rock on the island. The issue is with the moai is how did they get them upright? How did they move them? Because they had to they carved them there out of the rock that was on the island. But the question is always how did they move them and set them in place perfectly? And a lot of people will say wooden rollers. The problem with that is on Easter Island there really aren't any trees. So if you don't have any trees, how do you make wooden rollers to move these things into place? That's one of the great mysteries of Easter Island. All right, Betty Lange, Mike, some graveyards have smaller monoliths as burial tombstones. Agreed. Well, yeah. So you'll see a lot of those small. Well, I mean, you'll see obelisks at graveyards or at cemeteries as headstones and grave markers or the Market family plot or what have you. That's pretty common. You could almost make a case to say that headstones in and of themselves, like the upright ones, are their own mini monolith. You know, they have the carvings on there for the names, not the, just the stone set into the ground or like the pillow type headstones that kind of pop up out of the ground a little bit. Those wouldn't really be monoliths, but the ones that are just, your classic headstone, you could probably say are mini monoliths, yeah. And then, of course, the ones that just, are like obelisks themselves, certainly small monoliths. Sarah Yusuf, what about rollers made of clay or dirt? I don't think rollers made of clay or dirt would really work when you have, 100 tons of stone on top of it. The clay or dirt would just get smashed. So that really wouldn't work. Robert Hanna, more structures seem to be discovered under the snow in Antarctica. Yeah, there's a lot of speculation about Antarctica these days, and I think that's going to be some fascinating things coming out here very soon, at least in the coming decades, because it's an area that we're starting to explore more of. Of course, there's enough of it melting now that more of it will be revealed. And there's so many different mysteries about Antarctica because it seems like we knew about it hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And then all of a sudden we forgot about it. I mean, we're going based off of ancient maps that it was known long, long ago. And it showed up on a couple of maps, like the Piri Reis map is a famous one that actually shows Antarctica from long ago. And then you look at maps from 200 years ago. There's no Antarctica there. It doesn't show up on the maps at all because we had forgotten that it existed. And then we rediscovered it back in the 1800s. So it's kind of interesting how that happens a lot throughout our history. Like right now, we as humans have forgotten how we created so many of those massive ancient structures. We're just now coming into the technology to be able to do some of it, but for moving a lot of those blocks that they seemingly just put into place, they were playing Tetris or whatever. We don't even have cranes right now that would handle it. And the couple that we have that would handle some of those blocks are massive, massive in scale. And you'll talk to engineers that, okay, how could they have possibly have done that? And they're looking at it like, well, yeah, we only have one crane that would be able to handle that, and just to do one block of it would take us, 8 hours with this massive machine to be able to set the one thing in place. So how in the world did they possibly do this? I have no idea how they did that. So it's fascinating how we as humans lose our own history over time only to rediscover it later down the road. And I think at some point we will rediscover how we move those things into place. The guy that built the Coral Castle down there in Florida, claimed to have rediscovered how the pyramids and those ancient structures were built, and he moved his blocks at Coral Castle into place. He wrote some documents on magnetism that I guess still have not yet been deciphered as to how exactly he did it. He had the one component of that everybody believes is the mystery is this black box that he had on the top of a tripod. Did that actually have an effect on how he was being able to move the blocks? Nobody seems to know that, but it does seem to have something to do with magnetism. Candy Orton, Mike, has anyone tried to recreate a replica with the same exact natural materials to try to duplicate that energy and test it if it's effective? Perhaps it needs to be as big as the pyramids to work. Yeah, and that's kind of interesting that you bring that up, because people have tried doing things like that to build little replicas, on a much smaller scale, and it hasn't really worked, of course, when they've tried to do that. And I think you're right. I think the reason is that it needs to be on a massive scale like that for it to work effectively. There's also other things to consider here. It's not just the size of it. And I do think pyramidal structures made of certain materials will harness energy, but not as effective as where the Great Pyramid is, because that is so specifically aligned astronomically to true north as well, and also it's sitting on one of those nodes of telluric current across the Earth, so it is situated in a spot to harness the Earth's energy under the ground. So if I was to try to build the Great Pyramid here in North Ridgeville, Ohio, it's not going to be as effective, as it is down there on the Giza Plateau, because we don't have the same energy under the Earth here as down there. Now, there's telluric currents running around all over the place, but they're more prevalent in areas than others. We've talked about telluric currents and ley lines and all that stuff on here before, and when you find those currents, and the ancients were able to find them and build on top of them, and then there are those areas of continuity or connectivity discontinuities. So basically, those crossing points of those telluric currents that would create interesting phenomenon, and so they would build, the structures on top of there to be able to do all these things that we've been talking about with ancient science of power. And so, yeah, if you're building a smaller replica and you're not putting it there on top of the exact spot where the Great Pyramid is, then you're not going to have the same results, and that's certainly a problem. So, all right. What else do you guys have? Guess we are getting down toward the end of the show here. So I really appreciate all the questions, guys. This has been a very fast and interesting hour here. And I do want to thank you all again for the support with the nominations for Paranormal Rewind. Absolutely appreciated. And next week is our last week for the year for Edge of the Rabbit Hole Beyond the Shadows. Those are our last live weeks. So Rob Guttrow is going to be joining us for Edge of the Rabbit Hole. Fantastic friend of ours. He'll be back to talk more on pets in the afterlife. He actually is working on his third book in that series, as well as holiday spirits. So that is going to be a very fun episode with Rob, don't yet have a subject yet for Beyond the Shadows, but maybe we'll do something seasonal for that. Something kind of fun, kind of like what we did here with the not the Obelisk, the Monoliths tonight. Something a little bit more fun. Again, with the way the year has gone, I think this has just been a fun and creative way for the world to kind of come together and unite under something that's mysterious and it harkens back to not only our ancient culture but also modern pop culture, and so it's just, to me, a very fun way to connect us all together on en route to 2021. So, all right, everybody, again, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and get to the shout outs now. All right. So our Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreons for tonight: Tom McNicholas, Andrew Cox, Dustin Samario, David Yeisley, and Joe Chandler. Thank you all very, very much for being Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreons tonight. You can also want to thank our other Patreon patrons as well. You can check us out, patreon.com/hauntedroadmedia. All right. So then let's go ahead and get to our participants tab. We have Betty Lange, Brenda Brown. Thank you both very much for joining us tonight. Kenny Orton, thanks for joining us once again. C. Ramirez, 884. Appreciate you stopping by tonight. Donna Liska, thank you once again. There's Greg Rentgen and Helen Espinoza. Thank you both very much. Jackie Campbell, thanks for joining us tonight. Robert Hanna, thank you as well. There's Christopher Stanton from Stanton's Journeys. It's great to see you down there. Tom McNicholas is in the house. And Tim Schoen. Great to see you down there, Tim. Also, Victoria Monday, my co-hostess from Edge of the Rabbit Hole. Also want to thank Quarantine Ghost for haunting the chat. Always appreciated. With guess I had a lot of questions. I appreciate feeding me all the questions. Let's see, I think we got Alina the fan. There's Alina. Good to see you. Who else is in the house? I know Adam Tiller is lurking out there somewhere and watching Oak Island. All right, scroll through here. Daniela Stas out in Germany. Thank you. Vielen Dank, Daniela. Sarah Youssef, thank you for your questions as well. Did I get Lenora Martinez? I think I said Lenora. I don't know. All right, everybody. I think that's going to be about... Oh, there's Katie Palmer. I think that's going to be about it, though, guys. Again, thank you all very much for the wonderful support. And for anybody that's new here, please, by all means, go ahead and subscribe. This will be out as an audio podcast later on in the week, as well as Edge of the Rabbit Hole. And then over the weekend on KGRA Radio, they actually have a new website, kgradb.com. So you can check out the rebroadcasts there. And also, yeah, if you haven't jumped on any of the holiday deals yet at MikeRickSecker.com, you can do that as well, up to 25% off on a lot of great stuff. And yeah, one more time for Ireland, right? Only a handful of spots left. Give the gift of Ireland for the holidays. That's what we've been posting here over the past week. So, all right, everybody. Yeah, Adam Tiller, holy shamoly, huh? Gary Drayton found some more good stuff, huh? All right, everybody. You have a great night. We'll see you next week. Till next time.